All right, so I'm here at the house I'm going to be staying at for the next couple of months until I can get my place livable. And I apologize for doing the handheld thing. My tripod is actually in my shipping container, which is still on a boat. So anyways, this is the house, and it needs a bunch of work. And landlords, there's some lessons to be learned here, and I'm going to basically show you what they are. But first, I'm going to show you what the outside looks and what the area around here looks like. So this is the house. And there is pretty much nothing around here. My nearest neighbors are cows. And I've got this driveway, comes out here. And that road is about 2 miles long, and there's only a couple of other houses on it. So I've really got no neighbors. It's kind of nice. I actually like it. I like the remoteness of this place. And the house is a really nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But the landlord lived in California, and the tenants who were here for 5 years kind of trashed the place. They left, and they left the place a mess. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that was broken. So there was tons of furniture. They left their clothes. They left everything. The bad part was they apparently had a dog or a cat that the cat pissed all over one of the rooms. So that room I'm trying to get the smell out of by dumping enzymes. And the water catchment system was messed up. So I'm going to show you some stuff with the water catchment system and what we have to do. And one of the other issues is that nothing here has been mowed or cleared in years. So we have a lot of growth, which is actually a problem for the catchment system. Let's go back to the catchment system. All right, so I'm back here at the catchment system, and here is exactly what it is. Water comes off the roof into these pipes, comes down, runs underground, pops up, and fills this catchment tank. And as you can see, this catchment tank needs a little work. The pipes that form the roof support are pretty rusted and pretty bad shape. They're not anchored to the side like they should be. So this entire framework really can't be repaired. This is all rusted together. So it needs a whole new framework. The cover looks like it might be okay. A little bit of sediment in the bottom. That's not really a big deal, but does need to be cleaned up. But here's the real issue. So the side of the tank has basically blown out. It's rusted and collapsed. And I have enough water here that I can take a shower and do what I need to do. It does run through a filter system, and I'm not worried about the little bit of dirt that's in there because that gets filtered out. The problem, though, is that the tank actually there's a hole in the rubber over here. And that hole cannot really easily be patched because it's a seam. So it's going to need a whole new liner. But this is what happens when you don't have what's known as an overflow setup. So there's usually a valve set up that allows when the tank gets full, it diverts the extra out. And what's probably happened here is that extra water has poured over the side and rusted out the side of this tank. The rest of the metal is actually pretty good. And the cost to replace the whole tank and materials is about $4,500. For about half of that, we can replace these panels. So what we're going to do is undo this strap that holds this cover. We're going to peel the cover back, and we're going to unbolt over there and replace it. This is just a sample panel to make sure that the corrugations were correct, and fortunately they were. The other thing I'm going to do is anywhere there's surface rust, I'm going to come through, I'm going to sand that off and prime it and paint it so this doesn't happen again. So lack of an overflow valve probably caused that. You always want to have an overflow valve. A couple of other issues that are going on here. As you notice, the pipe comes straight off the roof and comes down. There's a thing called a first flush diverter. And you want a first flush diverter because what it does is the first batch of water that comes out is diverted. That's the water that takes all the crap that's on your roof, the dust, the dirt, the bird droppings, etc., and it flushes that out, and then the remaining water goes into the system. The second problem with this is the way that it's set up. This comes down, goes underground, pops back up, and sends the water in. Well, that whole section that's underground basically now gets, over years and time, gets filled with dirt and sediment and has other problems. What they should have done was they should have put a first flush system and then ran the pipe through the air under a little support and had it just drop in directly so you don't have that low spot where it comes back up. The other thing that happens with the low spot is it requires the entire system to be full of water before the water comes out. And that puts a lot of pressure on the system. This morning when it was raining and there was no water coming into the tank, it was because one of the lines underneath the house had popped off. And it had popped off because whoever built this didn't bother to glue stuff together. So that's a whole nother issue. Over here we got our little pump house. And the pump house, there's a pump here, but I'm having a problem with the pump where it'll build pressure and then it loses pressure, most likely because, as you can see, there's no check valve in here. A check valve is a one-way valve that prevents the pressure from going back. So what's happening is the pump is running, it's building up pressure, and then the pressure is forcing water back out and back into the tank. So that's another issue. I'm going to have to put that in. Over here we have our filter system, and as you can see, the filter's already catching the crud that's in there. But again, whoever installed this filter system, this should be inside, not outside, because it's a clear container. Sunlight gets in there and you'll get mold, you'll get algae growing in there. So I'm going to try to get like a dark sock or something to put over this, but those should be usually they come in clear or blue. Clear is to be used indoors, a blue is to be used outdoors. And then here, this system is a UV light. And so the UV light actually kills any pathogens and makes the water drinkable. Right now, the UV light doesn't work because the ballast is bad. Again, this is more stuff that just wasn't taken care of here by the previous tenants. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of grass here. This is really bad because what happens is the plants, as you can see, they're starting to grow up the side of the tank. And if you don't cut this stuff back, the plants will actually grow into the tank, and then they start punching holes because they're trying to get to the water that's in there. So one of the things I got to do here is I got to basically get a brush hog, because this hasn't been mowed in years, and mow all of this down. And it's going to be interesting because there's all sorts of stuff. The grass grows so thick here that there's all sorts of stuff hidden in this grass. I got to be real careful about it. You can see there's pallets here. There's some other junk up in here. I'm going to show you what happens to a roll of fencing in Hawaii when you don't mow around it. You just leave a roll of fencing lying on the ground. See, this is fencing. This is a roll of hog fencing that has been completely taken over by the grass. So that's going to be fun to get out. I think when I get my tractor here, I'll hook that and yank it back out. But this is also why you don't want to leave shit like that lying in your yard in Hawaii. All right, guys, the water tank is basically done. We still have some other stuff in the water system to take care of, but the tank is done. The lid is on. I've tightened it around. They recommend like looping and lacing the rope through that and then tightening it. It doesn't work. It still comes off. So what I did instead was I used some extender bolts or extender nuts here, extension nuts, and eye bolts everywhere where there was a bolt coming through, and I tied down the cover like this. It allowed me to tighten it up more. Still got a little bit of bowing. There's still probably some slack I can take out here and there, but overall this is working really well. The cover's patched. We sanded and painted. You can see some of the spots where we sanded off surface rust, and the two new panels are over here. And the old panels are sitting right there, and at some point we'll cut those up. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to slice it on either side of that and save the short pieces, because somebody who's got a tank that has maybe a short piece and, you know, needs to patch their tank, maybe they could use those. So I'll just give those away on like Free Cycle or Buy Nothing. So the tank's done. We also have an overflow now. So the overflow valve allows, when water gets up to a certain point, it'll push through and it won't be spilling over the edge like it did over there, which is what caused that. So we got the overflow valve in. Everything else is working good. There are some issues on this portion coming off the roof. As you can see, we got water leaking there because that piece is rotted or fallen out. It looks like it fell out, I think. And also there's no first flush diverter, so I'm going to do a separate video on those. But we got that. And we fixed our pump problem. So our pump was running continuously because there was no backflow preventer. There was no backflow preventer here, which has now been added, and there was none in the tank at the end of the line called the foot backflow preventer, where the water gets sucked up. So all that's been fixed. Pump now works great. There's no problems with it. It's kicking on right now, probably because the pressure dropped slightly. I just used the sink inside, and it'll shut off in a moment. But this is working. The UV light system is working. I don't know if you can see these numbers. Yeah, I think it's flashing on the camera because of the frame rate. But the UV light system is now working. So everything's working properly. I've got nice clean water in the house. I'm really happy. So now I'm off to the next thing I gotta fix here. And this will be a separate video. So here we go.